Imagine this. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings. This is your house. But is it your home? Hi, I'm Nelson DeMello, and join me as we try to find our home beyond our borders.
I don't know. I think that's fine.
Yeah, that's a good take.
Welcome back. We're going to go through Exodus. Guys, if you've been with me this far, I appreciate you so much. I know I'm just yapping and rambling and just talking a lot. I appreciate y'all. I hope you guys are just grabbing a bunch of nuggets, I hope you guys are learning. I also want to say I've got some special plans for next year. All of next year. I'm recently gotten back into music. Been very motivated. I'm going to release 12 albums, guys. One a month. I'm going to have podcasts. I'm going to kind of shift, at least for the year, what the podcast is going to be about. I'm just kind of break down the album, not in a musical sense, but an idea sense, right? I'm painting a picture and I want to talk about it. I want to make sure people get it and understand it. So join me in that. Get hyped, get excited. I know, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. I think it's going to be worthwhile. So Exodus, guys, here we have the end of Genesis with Joseph. It's how do you say, once upon a time, that happily ever after, right? And, everything works out. They're in Egypt, families are there, they're chilling, they're nice, cool. What happens then is a couple of generations later, Joseph's dead and the Pharaoh also dies. And this new Pharaoh, he doesn't know who Joseph is. And he's looking at these Israelites, these Hebrews, and they're like, yo, they're getting strong and powerful. We can't let them have another generation of young men. They'll be too much to handle. And so what happens is they start slaughtering kids. I guess overarching, what we're going to see is a story of redemption, of course, but it's an allegory for even our life of how God will rescue us from the power and the grip of sin through baptism? I don't know if that's theologically correct, but in this process of baptism into the desert. And even in the desert, we long for Egypt, but it doesn't have its grip on us the way Pharaoh had his grip on the slaves. And we'll talk about kind of what goes on in the desert there. But yeah, so going back a little. So Moses is born into this violence, I guess, this massacre. And, he gets on the river, the princess finds him, and This is kind of where it gets interesting because you're going to see a lot of parallels with Jesus and Moses. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about in Genesis of, is the story of Jesus just a analysis, critique? Is it just trying to compare the story of Moses to the story of Jesus by adding these details that are similar? Or is it actually true by coincidence, by some kind of design in the story of humanity, that these two things coincide, right? And what am I talking about? Well, Jesus was also born into a massacre of his own time. And so you put these two things together and you're reading Matthew and you see that and you're like, huh. And Matthew was written for the Jewish population. So you're a Jew and you know the story of Moses, and then you read and you're like, that's interesting. So Moses, right? He was born into this kind of massacre. Jesus was also born into this kind of massacre. That's very, very interesting. And then, it goes on and on and on. But again, if these are historical, documented facts, and I know that the massacre that happens in the story of Jesus, I don't remember if there was I think the evidence that they have is that there was a census that was done, and they knew the character of Herod, and they wouldn't put it past Herod to do something like that. And I think that's the amount of evidence that we have. We don't have any like, oh yeah, and this was the, the massacre that happened, the Galilean massacre, nothing like that. But it's like too much circumstantial evidence. Like when you have enough circumstantial evidence to create an entire pyramid around a perimeter around a story, it starts, you're like, yeah, it must have happened. Like there's no way around it, right? And so that's kind of at least my thought process is, if there's just too much evidence like surrounding the story without the story being declared, oh yeah, this is true. It's like, well, I mean, it's got to be true. And this isn't just for the Bible. I mean, you can put me in any you can give me a what do you call it? One of those like a conspiracy theory, and if you just give me enough circumstantial evidence, I'll be like, yeah, I mean, it's got to be, and I think that's kind of how it goes, JFK assassinate. Okay, anyways, let's let's focus. So we have here, right, that connection, right? Moses born into a massacre, Jesus born into a massacre. We will see throughout the story and this allegory, and always pointing to Christ, and the metaphor then is completed by understanding that as much as Moses delivered his people, how much more will Jesus deliver his people, and from what, and all these things, right? The birth and formation of Moses. This is Exodus 2 and 4. So I think it's very important to understand, I mean, context of how the Pentateuch was written. Moses was a prince, which means that he was alphabetized, right? He was literate, intelligent. He knew the cultures around him. He knew strategy. He knew math. He knew all these things because he was a prince. He had to know these things, right? Like all he had, right? All these people went to work and The princes need to get educated because they're going to be governors, successors, whatever the case is. So that's his first 40 years. That's what he was in. And I think that's like the context of, his intelligence and maybe not his personality so much. Like my question is like, how did he arrive to the story of Genesis, right? Like how did he end up writing that? And I think what ends up happening, there's two, not only two theories. These are the two theories that pop up in my head, but one is a lot of cultures, they had a verbal history that was passed down, and they had one guy, a few guys, whatever, that were dedicated to just memorize the story of, their people. And so he just grabbed that guy and wrote it down. Boom. That's Genesis. Another idea, more mystical, more spiritual, more fascinating, is visions. So it all came to him in visions. He wrote it down, and boom. Regardless, we have this story. And then obviously we look at the rest of the Pentateuch, and it's just his life and the laws God gave him, right? So it's nothing as crazy as writing Genesis. So he was trained to be a leader. He was trained to be educated on all these things in his first 40 years. And then he murders a guy that was seen by a bunch of people. Pharaoh found out and tried to kill him, so he ran away. He ran away to the land of Midian, where he found the priest of Midian, who ended up becoming his father-in-law. He became a shepherd, and he was a shepherd for another 40 years. Not only did he have this capacity, let's say the hard skills of leadership, but in these next 40 years, God worked on his soft skills. And what I mean by that is his character, his patience, his developed, really his patience. I mean, he dealt with sheep, and if you don't know anything about sheep, they're really dumb. And then only after that, right? He was 80 something years old when God called him from the burning bush. I think that's just like, I look at my life. Maybe you look at yours. And you're like, I'm not exactly where I'm supposed to be. It feels like, or I don't even know where I'm supposed to be, but I don't feel like I'm there yet. I don't think I have it. I don't know, really what I'm doing. And we get impatient, and we start looking at God maybe and thinking, like, have you forgotten about me? Like, have you put a pause on my story? And when I read this, that Moses only started doing something significant at 80 years old, right? That that opens my eyes a little bit to one, like God's plans are just longer term than ours, right? And yeah, we have pressures, bills, stuff like that that we need to take care of, and that's honestly what maybe puts a little bit of pressure on us. But also this thing of, like, I don't know, when we look at the story of David, for example, he was crowned king or anointed king, and it took him like another decade for him to actually get the throne. So it's just this weird thing of like, I have a promise. I know God has a plan for me. I am not seeing it happen. And obviously, Moses had no idea this was going to happen. He had no expectations. I actually am convinced that he loved being a shepherd, and we're going to get there in a second. Because life is peaceful. You do the same thing every day. You have your family. It's nice. It's comfortable. And we'll get more into that. But like, there's just, I just want to inspire and motivate for anyone who's there. I mean, this is me. I'm on the same boat. Of we count the days and the hours and the minutes of, man, what are we doing here? But God is counting by years, right? He's counting by centuries, by decades, millennia. So he has this grand scheme, and we need to be not aware, but like just be secure in that he has a plan. It's not on TikTok time. You know what I mean? And he's shaping our character. It's all intentional, right? Like, taking care of sheep for 40 years might sound like meaningless and mundane and all these things, but it really shaped him, you know? You really see it when God's wrath is like ready to explode on the people, and Moses like, yo, you made promises. Like, people are dumb. I know, they're sheep. But you made a promise, and you're a God to keep your promise, right? And so just moments like that, you're like, oh, this is what shepherding did to him, right? Like, this is how his heart was changed and molded, and it was God's intention, right? And so we need to understand that sometimes the work God is doing isn't even like seeable, right? And this is something I really try is like, oh, what season am I in right now? What is God working on? And this and that. Sometimes I don't have a really good example of this. Maybe there's a soccer example of, you're juggling, and then that turns into better volleys or something. Like, it's you think God is working on you, and maybe he is working on you here, but you don't see the connection that's actually changing something else as well, right? And maybe that secondary thing that you can't see is maybe something that he wants to work on for something in the future that you don't even know you needed to prepare for. Just understanding that God is intentional that way, and God is knowledgeable and wise that way, I think allows us to take a breath, and that's important, to just take a breath and just be present, right? I have a hard time being present because I'm always looking ahead, and I'm always looking to do better. And sometimes we just got to be where we are and just trust God, Okay, God calls them at the burning bush, right? The bush that burns but doesn't consume. He says, I am who I am. I am that I am. And this reveals God's identity. It reveals his eternal, self-existent nature. I think another thing it does, and again, maybe this is just the season I'm in and what I've been processing through, but it says something about who he is, in the sense that God is not just love. God is not just mercy and justice. And by saying God is love and God is justice, God is righteousness, right? You're defining him by just that. And I know that's not people's intentions and this and that, but we can fixate on certain on certain characteristics of God. And by fixating, we might, without really thinking, make him just that. we're going to see a story in Exodus where this is the case, and I think I'm going to talk more about it then. But God is just God, right? By defining him with any words, you have made him derivative of who he actually is. So it's important that we do understand God as God, just God. Who's God? God is God. He is that he is. He is. He exists. And he is all that he is. That's important because he's his own person. And we'll get that. We'll get into that specifically in a second. But another important thing is Moses' reluctance, right? So the reluctance of, oh, I have a heavy tongue, whatever that means, whether he had a stutter or just the fat tongue and literally sounds came out of his mouth weird, or, whatever the case was, slow to speak. Maybe he was just like, he paused a lot, which, honestly, like now that I put it that way, slow to speak, I know that I'm like talking and rambling and stuff, but you guys are going to get the edited version where I don't take 15-second, 20-second, 30-second pauses to respond, where some of the stuttering that I do is out, right? You get a filtered, clean version, and that's cool, right? With me, cool with you. Keep it cash money. But Moses didn't have that, right? So if anything, I like just to have a picture. Paul, he is so boring when he preaches that a guy, or was it Peter? It might have been Peter, that a guy fell off a balcony, hit head first, died, and he revived him. So it is an irony that maybe like the most boring people are maybe the most powerful speakers or have the most powerful ideas. I don't know, but maybe I'm just throwing stuff out there. But that's a huge concern of mine, and something that I want to work on and be intentional about is being entertaining. And I actually had this conversation with a neighbor of mine where he was like, "Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to do this whole fake energy and this and that. Like, this is just who I am." And like, as much as I understand that, and I do agree with that, I have to understand that my purpose isn't to necessarily be all that I am. It's to entertain. Like, this is a YouTube channel. I'm here to entertain, right? I'm not here solely to be myself. And so, yeah, I mean, this is mostly who I am. I actually, maybe off camera, I'm a little bit better because I'm actually, we're oh my God, Jordan Peterson, but just we're playing, right? There's play. It's I'm talking, I'm trying to figure you out, getting your energy, matching that energy, going back and forth, right? That's conversation. Here, I'm matching energies with a camera, and that's difficult, His reluctance. Oh my gosh. Okay. So he was insecure, obviously. He had fear. It didn't come out of rebellion, but it did come out of like humility and brokenness of like, God, I just, are you sure it's me? Like, you go ask someone else maybe. I don't know. Like, why me? That's another aspect I think that I can relate to, is that thing of like, well, I don't know, not in the sense of like, hey, I'm calling you to lead lead the people, and whatever, but just this thing of like, for a small example, when God, like, you feel that tug to pray for someone or evangelize to someone, and you're like, why me? Like, what did I do? What words can I say that will convince this person? Or what words can I say that will maybe lead them into healing or to repentance, or whatever the case is? Like, what if I don't know enough? What if I say something stupid? What if and you're feeling all of these fears and all of these things. And God is like, I didn't ask you how. I just asked you to do it. And that's going to be a huge thing moving forward from Exodus, when we look at Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and just onward. God is always just asking. And oh man, okay, we're not there yet. Oh man, okay, I'm gonna push it. I'm gonna keep it moving. All right. So God does not, his call does not depend on natural confidence or ability or anything. It's simply obedience, right? God did not ask you how. He just gave you a what, and he said, do it, right? And this is the call, like in the most vague way to be Christian, I think is just to respond to that call. When you feel that tug, say yes. I think in the most vague way, and I say that because like I think yeah. I'll just leave it at that. In the most vague way of being Christian, it's just saying yes to that call. And I say vague like maybe you don't know that it's God, Jesus calling you to do something greater than yourself, but say yes. You know, I think that's just like yeah, like I said, the vaguest Christianity you can live out is just saying yes to that voice. Cool. Wow. I think we're getting somewhere. I think we are getting somewhere. We have then another insight being that God uses our weaknesses to display his power. And there's so many verses about that, especially in the New Testament, of just this idea that like God's going to put you where you feel dumb so that he can seem smart. And like, I don't know, I kind of enjoy that, to be honest. And that's actually, you know what? I think that's something I've been chasing after too. And I think that's why like why I think this is for me, right? Like I know, no one watches these or whatever the case is, but like the feeling of inadequacy that I feel and the dependency I have, like it's not just feeling inadequate, right? Because that just sucks, right? Like I don't know, if you aren't good at soccer at all and you just keep trying to play soccer and you're like, I'm just garbage at this, that doesn't feel good. But there are certain things that, not that you're garbage at, but you just don't feel inadequate. Like Philip Anthony Mitchell, I think, talks about like how much insecurity he has about preaching and speaking. Like he doesn't believe he's a great speaker. He doesn't have the technique. He doesn't have like the etiquette of speaking. He's no Martin Luther King. And so in that inadequacy, and like we look at him, maybe, depending on if whatever, but he's obviously a preacher that brings hundreds of thousands of people, whether online or in person, and he still feels that inadequacy, right? So it's not like you're actually garbage, but maybe you see the chasm of like what you're supposed to be doing and what you can give, and you're like, it'll never be enough. But God fills those gaps. And knowing that and chasing after that, I think also becomes the life of a Christian. And it's that call, right? I mean, oh my gosh, dude. Yeah, it's that call to adventure. It's that call out of comfortability into forcing yourself into a situation where you have to trust, where you have to, like, putting yourself in a position where you have to trust in God, where you have to trust in his words to be faithful, to be active in your faith. Yeah. There's a call and then there's that decision, right? It not just anything that makes you uncomfortable will bring you that, but there is a call that God has that could put you in that position, and that call we have to accept. So for me, it's writing music, because anytime I write a new song, it's like I forget everything I knew about music, and I'm like, okay, how do I write a song again? what on beat, on key, and that's pretty much the starting point of every song I will ever write, because it's like I don't know, I can't put every song has a different process, and I don't just pop song, like a 1 4 6 2 or whatever. If you know, or whatever chord progression is like for pop music, and just be like, okay, well, let's put some 808 and some drums and da da da, like, here you go, a song. It's never like that. I have to like feel it out. I have to, yeah. And so that makes me feel inadequate. And you might listen to it and be like, well, this isn't inadequate. I'm like, yeah, I get it, but I don't know what I'm doing. I think that feeling of I don't know what I'm doing, but I love doing it. that might be the feeling, chasing that. I don't know what I'm doing, but I love doing it. And it comes with headaches and it comes with frustrations, and that's not what I'm saying, but like this just gives me meaning and purpose and aligns me to what I think God has created me for. And that's scary and frustrating. And look, I mean, would I rather be, some hedge fund, broker or whatever, making six figures, or an accountant, making a stable, easy money? Yes, I would, but nothing in my bones, my fiber, like nothing in me will allow myself to do that, which sucks, I guess. So I'm here, doomed, as the as a suffering artist. Ugh, the melodrama. Okay, guys, I'm gonna leave it at that. I'll see you guys next time. Yeah, see ya. Peace and blessings and all that. Hey guys, thank you so much for going on this journey with me. If you like the content, please like, subscribe, follow, and remember, there is more to life, and that is good news. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.